observing the movement and feeling it than perhaps I'd intended. Was it interesting? Any insights? Pardon?
Oh, we learnt a lot.
Okay. Can you be a little bit more
I'm just
detailed?
It will seem like we didn't learn a lot, both.
Well, let us be the judge.
No,
maybe.
What we discovered was that it's not just about going for the ride, but in order to really allow the person to allow the person to allow their weight to rest in your hands. There was a sense that you not only had to indicate with your hand where the movement initiated, as well as giving it a sense of direction.
Okay, that's one possibility.
Well, that's what we found, especially with the leg on the return.
The leg on the return.
And so,
the foot up or knee up?
Knee up.
Knee up. Oh, yes.
Knee up. That you could get the knee up and bring the hip, and that the hip would fall back. But to do the return journey, you had to really give, because both of us had the same issue of not letting the weight
disappear out of your hand.
No, it would just
dropping it. Okay.
No, holding it.
Holding it.
Not letting the weight go. So in order to do that, we had to initiate and then take the weight and give a sense of direction.
So were you doing, was the person lying doing the movement, or were you trying to see how their knee lifted?
Yes.
I would say then you maybe did too big a movement.
It didn't matter what size the movement was.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So what about if you'd done 1 millimeter? Just wait a second. 1 millimeter. So there's several things in that. One is that you actually are describing the capacity to support someone in motion. So we did some support it's active, but while someone was lying still. That's one way we support people. But in the Feldenkrais method, we use support in so many ways. And that return movement
is direct.
Well, either which way.
Yeah.
Are you supporting their movement or interfering with their movement? And can someone allow themselves to be supported? Can you follow their movement in a way that they feel your presence and can reduce unnecessary work? I mean, there's so many factors going on simultaneously. But to recognize that, one, it's hard to give up the work, to allow that person to receive your weight.
Yes, but it was... So in order to allow that to happen...
Yep, because you felt you needed to initiate the movement.
No, we felt we had to change the intent of the way we held the person. Great.
Do you mean let them know you were still supporting on the way down?
Not necessarily limited to that, Helen, but it sounded like they needed to give a sense of the direction that they were going to go in, so that there was I'm hearing that in your touch you were finding dimensions that conveyed more than one thing simultaneously.
Correct.
Paraphrasing.
Yes.
But that's what
that's right? Yeah.
Yeah. Great. Because it's not for some it's a first approximation, for others it's more than that. But in all of the processes, they will be revisited again in different ways. And it is a process of finding out. You need to learn to feel it, to sense it. I could tell you But that doesn't give you the ability. How we develop the ability is through our sensing, through our doing, through our not getting it right, through the feedback that someone gives us. And many times exploring the same thing in different ways. Slightly.
And it was like,
But it was like a little, oh, that was what.
Yeah, great.
That's why.
And all those,
very much.
Yeah, those ups. I mean, yes, keep them or put them in your. Put them in your chronicle. Is it? They have a chronicle. I would chronicle those aha or whatever, wherever you want to put the emphasis. Chelsea, throw.
When you said about making it smaller, I did that with Kat's foot. I think you reminded me to go smaller at some point. But just trying to lift her foot. I said to her at one point, I remember you saying that we're habitual even in the way that we think, because I found it easy to lift her heels straight up and down.
Mm-hmm.
So I just kept doing it like that. But then I went, no, it's actually not quite right. So I gave it just a little bit of a roll, and it was millimeters. I think it was a very, very small movement. And yeah, then it came easier, which then made the ball of her feet, that was easier to go forward. So it was almost, if I did it larger, it was almost that.
So you found the pathway that was her Goldilocks.
Yeah.
And that's
and
what...
it was very tiny, very small.
It can be really subtle. Sometimes it's not so subtle. But it's that our search, not necessarily the practitioner getting it, but it's our search for that informs a person about who they are. And when we find that direction, if we find it, it's something where their nervous system goes, that's delicious. I like that. I feel safe, or whatever it is, I'm putting words onto the nervous system, then that has most of the time, a calming effect that then can allow you to develop other options as you learn more, to introduce other directions or other timings or other coordinations. That's great.
It's a bit of a minefield, though. You can't
a minefield.
You can't think all the things at the same time. Yet.
No. So could you drive a car the first time you got in it?
Not well, but yeah.
No. So we are much more complex than cars, and we're a system.
Yeah.
Got a lot more than 4 wheels. But you have to learn, you have to practice. And it's that with this person, something different with that person, something else with someone else. It's bringing you the sensory knowledge of yourself in action, because it's not just them, it's you. It's you are in the system with them.
That made a vast difference as well.
So you're paying attention hugely.
And the questions, I think Jenny came and helped for a moment, and then I know I got lost what I was doing, but then just brought myself back to it and just said, which way do you like going? And Kat just rolled. But before that it was quite stuck. But I wasn't asking anything either. I was just didn't know where I was for a bit.
Great.
But, that was fun, that one.
Someone else? Anyone else? Yeah.
I was just made aware of it.
Hold it and come back to it. I don't know if anyone's ever had the opportunity to round up merino sheep. Yes? How do merinos move? How do merinos move?
All together.
No. Right. They go around and round in circles. And so if you could imagine, there's you on the horse, trying to control the horse, trying to control a mob that's going round and round in circles, and maybe direct dogs as well to get them through the gate. You've got to approach it just the right angle, or they go right past the gate, and then they're off down around the paddock again. So sometimes it seems to me that it's like kind of wrangling that mob of sheep to just the right angle where they're going to pop through the gate and then the change occurs.
Uh-huh.
So if that image is any use to any of you, you're most welcome.
You got to do it. What's the 10,000 times?
What was highlighted to me was the amount of concentration you needed. You know, because
Uh-huh.
I get a bit lazy and lax, and the mind wanders off. You couldn't for 1 second. You'd just lose it. You'd go in the wrong direction, or you'd lose concentration. You'd lose your image of your skeleton where you were moving. So that was for me a big eye opener. You can't be lazy. It's 100% focus, or don't do it. Yeah.
I'd say maybe that as you go through the training, you might find that you're able to shift your focus, come back, so it doesn't have the same amount of feeling of concentration. But if it's a new way of paying attention to someone, may well feel like that.
No,
And
hard
it's
work,
great
yeah.
that you noticed that.
Yeah. Yeah, Jane told me when I wasn't concentrating, it was really obvious.
Ah.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, it was
What
good.
did you feel? That's interesting.
There's the connectedness between the two of us disappears,
Mm-hmm.
and the movements become his movements become very mechanical. There's nothing else behind it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just did it a little bit with Sylvia then, and I felt, yes, when I
A little closer.
thought of my contact with the floor, I felt more connected.
When you were receiving or doing?
Doing
Yeah. So when you felt your contact or her contact?
my contact,
Your contact, great.
I wasn't up to thinking of her contact.
Well, most importantly to begin with is your own. Absolutely. Behind you.
Yeah, I had that experience of, I had an experience of when I was connected to my pelvis or not. I mean, it's like saying driving a car, there was like about 6 different things I could pay attention to. And if I was paying attention to one, the others might slip. But that pelvis thing, like when I was like actually moving more from my pelvis and
Mhm.
setting myself up in that way, and then that organized, I guess, the rest of my body. And then I could then have that pressure that felt more in connection, and then that connection through to the floor with the other person. And then it felt like we were kind of like a unit more.
Mm-hmm.
And then the movement was lighter and they had actually more movement. Versus then I just say maybe focus on something different or one thing or just the touch, but it wasn't quite right. And then it would just all be completely different.
Great.
So yeah, it was really interesting. That is so core, that, you know, that whole relationship, you are kind of a unit, but yeah, without, you've got to pay as much attention to your own organization as theirs, really. Initially,
You
I mean, like you
do.
say, later it might become more second nature or more
Yeah.
of a good habit pattern.
But to begin with, unless you get as comfortable as you can, and comfortable has some characteristics that you were talking about yesterday. So it is that your weight is over your base support. So if I'm down here, the place where I am over my base of support, but if I'm out there, I'm not. My head's over here. That I'm using trying to use as much of my whole self in the action that I'm able to move in all directions. So it's not that we can get it perfect, but we can keep coming back to ourselves and scanning ourselves before you even begin to put your hand on.
Because we were talking about, I mean, I was saying I don't particularly like the height of those tables, or particularly like working on the floor. I've been to some practitioners that have had the raised, electric tables. And that's kind of my ultimate. But then I was thinking, is it just because I can't organise myself in a way that's actually comfortable, and maybe I would be fine to be doing FIs on the floor or those low tables, or whether,
So let's have a look at the height of the table when you next go to the table to work, to see if it is, because that's not necessary. Most practitioners will adjust the tables for them, or they'll check the table height before they start. Occasionally, if you've only got one FI and you think it's okay, or it suits the person having the lesson, you might leave it. But most of the time, there's a kind of standard relationship of height of table to practitioner. Doesn't mean your organisation won't prescribe you using a higher or lower at some times. But usually it is our own organisation that makes it more difficult to work on the floor. But pain is one thing. You do not want pain. Difficulty, if you use it as a reference to making yourself more comfortable, can really serve you, and staying inside the comfortable range. So if I, for whatever reason, need to sit like this, my comfortable range, so I need to keep my heel on my buttocks. I'm just making this up. I can't think. This is the first one that came to my head. Tonight I'll think of something different. But so I need to sit on my heels. I need to keep my buttocks there. I can't move very far. Perhaps, especially if, I'm not differentiated. So when I work with someone, I'm going to work within that range to find their easy range. It is not about how far they move, how much they move, or where they move to. So if you can get that, it's really important. So a difficulty in a certain position can serve you. It's just, it's a mind shift, mind bender, because we're so used to more is better. Yep. And a comfortable range. Yep. Make sure it's comfortable. Yep. Or if you only have a small range that you're comfortable in, work within that. Yep. Don't try and make the other person's movement bigger. You may actually evoke something surprising.
You could play bass glockenspiel that way. The movement you were just doing, perfect for bass glockenspiel.
Okay, good.
I was really fascinated, because I've done a lot of work where there's no one else in the room, that how hard it is to not become self-conscious when others are around, and stay focused with the task and with myself and them, and not everybody else, or worrying what the teachers are doing. The good student emerged. And I just thought, how old do you have to be to get rid of your good student?
Mine pops up every now and then. Yeah, maybe dead, because they come up in different guises. Yeah, but I think it's fabulous if you realise it, because then you can find what signals can you use in yourself, your breathing, your weight, your contact, to call you back in. So we all have preferences or biases to our orientation, either internally or externally, and what are the things either internally or externally that alert us. And it's about learning to find balance so that they don't trip us too far. So for me, teaching, I used to hear what I was saying before it even came out of my mouth and judge it. But when I realized I'm communicating to someone and they're people, and you want to learn, and I want to assist you, evoke that learning if I can, I forget about me. don't forget about me totally. Bring me in sometimes. But so it's relationship. Yes.
Not as good as you.
You need to
I
use
was
it.
adding
Oh.
on what you said. Anyway, I found exactly those things of the principle of not doing too much, and like that was probably like the biggest thing in the forefront, because that knee is so heavy, and like I just really wanted to like be able to organize myself, and I was like, yeah, like the pelvis has like, you know, all that ability in it for this movement and stuff, but all I really needed to do was just do it smaller, and it would have been much more effective. So the arrangement the arrangement orientation of my being body to connect with, and also the size was just there, the bread and butter.
And did you move around to see if was it Lockie you were working with, whether you felt his leg to lift more lightly when you organised yourself differently?
Yeah, tried heaps of different ways.
And could you feel differences between them?
Yeah, all of them.
Great. Great. Okay. Last one.
Yeah, one thing I realised was that the way that I was initially moving was not the same way as I enjoyed being supported to move.
Ooh.
Which is interesting, because my tendency was to almost roll back with the hip, but when I wanted it done, I just wanted it lifted so the hip didn't have to move, I guess. Yeah, or that my leg could relax whilst being in a position I couldn't normally do. Yeah.
Great. And the more you communicate your experiences with one another, the more aspects of forming a relationship that you learn, the more you help each other learn. So that's great. Okay. Anything else you want to add, Jenny? Any more merino sheep? Kangaroos?
No, the sheep have gone by. Yeah, I think I might have mentioned to somebody that I was talking with during the exercise that the minute our hands go on somebody else, we become us, not me and you. And so any experience that I have, you're having. And if I'm uncomfortable, that means I'm telling you about how to do something in an unpleasant or an uncomfortable way. So if I can create something that is light and easy for me, that's the experience that we're sharing. And you're learning maybe something that you weren't aware of, or learning how to do it in a slightly different way that gives an option.
Great, thank you. Okay, we're going to do some ATM.
So for this lesson, there's a little bit of preparation.